Alright, so this video is going to talk about a issue you might have after you upgrade to SBM 11 or sometime after 11, and particularly when we're going to do the upgrade database part for the orchestration engine. So in this demo here, I've already done the database upgrade for the application engine, so we're going to be talking about doing the orchestration engine database upgrade only here. Okay, so a little background on this. We're going to look at the application repository as it sits right now, just for a little history. And basically, in this environment, I've got 3 environments set up. The names are not realistic, but this one might be normally dev, prod, QA, something like that, right? But in this case, I'm just using it for illustration. In our example here, the default environment, this one will upgrade just fine and everything's going to work good, and we're going to go over what may be wrong with these other 2 and kind of common scenarios that people may run into. So the first thing I wanted to show you was something that you probably won't bite most people, but if it does, this is something you could run into. So I have a user in my system. I'm going to hit the upgrade thing here, and I have a user called orchadmin, and his password has an ampersand in it. Okay, so we ran into this, and I just want to make sure nobody else runs into it. But if you try to do your upgrade in that situation, you instantly get an error message that says the specified user is invalid or doesn't have privileges, which is a bogus error. But just know that your password for the SBM user can't have an ampersand, and there may be some other characters that could get in your way, but if there's any special characters and you get that error, you might just take a look at that. So anyway, we're going to go through this again. I'm going to use a different user this time, or you could have just taken the ampersand out of that password. So we're going to let this go. So behind the scenes, what this is doing is going out to your repository. It looks at all the environments that you have set up, and the first thing it does is it tries to use this URL right here to go out and discover what version of SBM is running in each of these environments. Okay, so once it does that, it will then pull all the different applications that are installed in each environment and look for any that have orchestrations, and then it's going to deploy those. So at the end of the day, all this thing is really doing is deploying your apps. Okay, and it's deploying them into the new structure in the database for the new orchestration engine that comes with Tomcat. So not too exciting right here. I'm just going to pause this for a second and wait till we get our first error. Okay, so we've run into our first problem here, and basically this says 1 or more deployment failures were encountered, blah blah blah. You can read that message. This first button here, this will basically just tell you which application had a hard time deploying. In this case, it happens to be one called TFS integration, whatever. This file isn't that much help in this case. The one that's helpful is this other one here, view log. And we'll go through this in a minute, but notice that this is called upgrade.log. If you were to close this sometime and then hit close, now to get back to that log, it's down under the SBM installation right here in this path, so Tomcat server default logs, and at the bottom here is called upgrade log. So if we open this log up, let's take a look at it real quick and see if we can see what's going on. So at first, it goes through and it looks at our different environments. So we have the one called default, we have another one called broken target servers, and we have another one called blank runtime. So if you remember, the first thing it does is goes through and looks at this web service here and gets a count of all the apps. So in this case, it found 20. The next one it found 20. This one it had a hard time, so it couldn't get the count. It says failed to get App Engine version, okay, from this URL, and then it failed out, and that's going to have a problem. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So just bear in mind that blank runtime has a problem. It says it couldn't get the application count for this guy. This is a very common problem, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So then it skips all that, and then it goes down and it starts doing the default environment. So it got its applications, goes through, starts retrieving things, finds which ones have orchestrations, so it doesn't even bother with most of these, and eventually if it finds one, it'll deploy it. And so these are being deployed. Now we're down under the next one of the environment is called broken target servers. So it's able to find the process apps, and it goes through, decides which ones it's going to deploy, same kind of deal, and gets all the way down here, and then it has a problem. It says can't deploy BPEL definition, and then it has some connection errors, things like that. So this is probably a pretty common problem that might happen as well. So again, it's going down. So this is when I was trying to do the deploy. So could not deploy this orchestration, blah blah blah. He gets all the way down to the bottom, and eventually basically gets done. So the very first environment that had a problem was this one called blank runtime, and it couldn't even get the apps from the app engine. So if we go over to the repository and we take a look at, so this one worked, default environment, everything worked perfect. This one was our first problem, and what I wanted to bring out, what I want to illustrate here, is this field right here, runtime server. If this is blank, just you have a problem. Okay, if this is blank, that is the problem. What happens is if you edit this and this is legit and able to work, in this case it won't even test connect. I know why, but so failed to connect. So if you hit save and this still doesn't fill in, that has to be your first priority. One good test for this, and one real good reason why this usually fails, you can test for this right now. What I do is I copy this and I just pretend like I'm creating a new environment. So we'll give it a name like test, and I'll paste this in here. Okay, and if I hit test, I know it's going to fail, but it doesn't give a very good message. It just says failed to connect. Now if I hit save, it's actually going to try to do something a little more useful, and when it does that, if you get an error like this, right, so this is talking about authentication, and it can't authenticate. I know in this case that the problem with this one is, let's just fix the original one. The problem with this is I put an X in here. Okay, so this needs to be a 1. That's just the wrong host name. But the point of this is if this runtime environment is missing, you first have to figure out what's wrong with it up here. So if I hit save now, we'll see what happens. Okay, so I hit save, but this still didn't fill in. Okay, so then you could do the same thing, like if that wasn't the problem. This might give us a little bit different error. Let's do it again, and it'll probably be authentication again. Okay, so we can't, this one actually says authentication service, but invalid user ID or password. So the problem with that one is, I'm going to list it in the knowledge base document. There's another knowledge base document that you can look at, but at the end of the day, what its problem is if I was to go into configurator here and go to security, in this guy's case, these are our SSO, or our secured or single sign-on, certificates. And if you look at the serial numbers right here, like this ends in 708, if I was to go into configurator on that other box that it's pointing to, this box here, if I was to go over there and look at this exact same serial number on this STS, this number will be different. Okay, so the other knowledge base document that's referenced in the link below in this one, we'll talk about how to fix that. That's an entirely different topic, but that is the underlying problem with this guy. This runtime server doesn't fill in. Okay, so if we remember looking at our log, if we scroll down, we had a problem deploying. On this other environment, we could actually get the apps, but we had a problem deploying. So right down here it said can't deploy. So if we go back to our other environment here and we pick on this guy, this all looks good. So our runtime is filled in. That's how it got the apps. And if we look at the target servers, I know because I set this up, these two guys are not able to use HTTPS. So if I test this, it'll fail. Okay, failed to connect. So I know to fix these, I will just make them go to 8085, non-SSL. Okay, it connected. And now if I fix both of these, it will do the upgrade again. I won't test that one. Okay, so now for what we can tell, we've fixed this one, and we know this one's still got a problem. But let's just do the upgrade again here and see what happens. And we'll close our log. All right. So now if we go back to where we were and run our upgrade again, we can retry this time. And put in our user, and we'll let this thing finish here. Okay, so that one finished. So it just says it's done and it's all good. And if I hit OK, our link goes away and things are good. Now, if you remember, we never really fixed the one environment right here with the blank runtime. We never really fixed that. This is still blank, but now if we go look at the log again, here's our upgrade log, and let me scroll down here. I think it just keeps appending to this, so we got to find out where we were. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay, so anyway, I started this log again. So deployment. Wait a second. Let me do this right. If I scroll down to the bottom, anyway, this was the last run, so it went deployed all these things. What I was going to show you was this one here. It says, hey, blank runtime. It got skipped, and the reason it got skipped was because it's from an old version of SBM. So the AE version in that on that environment hasn't been upgraded yet, so it simply skipped that environment and didn't deploy everything. The reason it was able to do that, even though there was no runtime filled in here, is because it runs a web service called getVersion that doesn't require any authentication. Okay, so that's why that one just got skipped. If this machine right here was on the proper version, you still would have had a problem because it still couldn't read the apps that were installed, because that one does require authentication. And again, in order to get that to finish, you'd have to look at that KB doc that we have below, talking about the SSO tokens and the serial numbers matching on both systems. Okay, so anyway, our OE upgrade is now finished, and we're continuing on. So the point of this video, I guess, is to basically take a look at first your upgrade log. Okay, take a look and see what errors are actually happening, and if those match any of the ones in this video, the second thing you want to do is come into the repository, and chances are the problem is going to be with these environments. Now, I've run into instances where customers have had bogus environments in here. They had them for ages and never did anything with them. They were just junk, or they copied something from a test environment and these didn't point anywhere anymore, or like I said, their target servers, they were bogus, they don't match anymore. So you can either just fix the ones you've got, or like if this one doesn't pertain to anything anymore, just delete it right? Just get rid of that environment, and then you could do your OE upgrade again, and it'll just, well, obviously won't do that environment because it doesn't see it anymore. And any ones you fix, they'll get tried again. So hopefully this helps helps someone get past the orchestration engine won't upgrade problem. There's other reasons that it won't upgrade. That's a little more advanced, but again, this upgrade log would show you that. And in certain situations, there's actually problems with the orchestrations themselves, and that you'd probably want to open up a support ticket with, and just I would collect log files right here, put that part of the case that you create, and say, hey, upgrade OE database won't upgrade. And if it comes down to one of the orchestrations themselves, we can dig into it a little further. But hopefully that helps.